What does it actually mean to be a self? It's one of those really big questions, feels almost too huge to pin down, but, well, it shapes every single moment, doesn't it?
It absolutely does.
Welcome, everyone, to the Deep Dive. This is where we try to unpack complex ideas, find those surprising connections, often from the sources you share with us.
And today we're diving into something truly extraordinary. It's called Mirrors of the Self, an interdisciplinary art project by Roberto F. D'Angelo.
Okay.
And it's not just, looking at pictures. It's this deep exploration of identity, perception, motivation. It really bridges science and philosophy using art.
Sounds fascinating. So our mission today, our goal for this deep dive is to sort of navigate this landscape he's created. We want to break down how the self is shown, not as this like fixed thing,
Right, not static at all.
but more like a process, something that's constantly dynamically pieced together from what we sense, what we remember, what we want.
Exactly. And we'll explore the forces that sort of modulate how accessible the self is to its own experience, how it balances belief against doubt, coherence against change. And it does this through really fundamental processes, things like empathy and dissociation.
Okay, empathy and dissociation, key terms there.
Yeah.
So how is the exhibition structured?
Well, it unfolds across three symbolic rooms. Think of them as three mirrors: waters, shards, and silence.
Water, shards, and silence.
Yeah.
Okay.
Each one reflects a different fundamental mode of the self, sort of capturing its ongoing motion, how we flow, how we sometimes fragment, and ultimately how we find a kind of unity.
And there's something tying it all together.
Yeah.
A red thread.
Yes, exactly. At the heart of it all is Der Wille, which translates to the will. It's this trilingual poem, German, Italian, English.
Wow.
But here's the interesting part. It's not a direct word-for-word translation. It's more like a reimagining in each language.
Ah, so it adapts the idea.
Precisely. It acts as this written analogy for the self's journey through those three states: waters, shards, silence. And what it really highlights is how the underlying structure of an idea, like will, might persist, but its cultural or emotional meaning can really shift depending on the language, the context.
But that makes sense. Different languages carry different baggage, different feelings.
Absolutely. And the artistic style itself is quite specific. D'Angelo uses il chiaroscuro, that classic light and shadow technique.
Right, from painting.
Yeah. But here it does something really clever. It blurs the line between our sentimental, sort of emotional responses and our epistemic frames, how we know or understand things. It helps you feel how symbols connect with us on multiple levels at once.
So it's not just seeing, it's feeling and knowing intertwined.
Exactly. And the project also uses synesthetic and dreamlike poetry, but presented as acted forms.
Acted forms, meaning performed.
Yes, brought to life through performance. It often blends senses like maybe hearing a sound triggers a color. It emphasizes how symbols can be this universal language, but their specific meaning can shift based on your experience, your culture, even while the underlying structures, the core ideas, remain somewhat constant.
Okay, that's a lot to take in already. So where do we start this journey? Is there an entry point?
There is. It begins with what D'Angelo calls a gentle overture, a poem from 2025 called Bubbles.
Bubbles, okay.
It sets the scene, focusing on two selves sort of suspended in time's currents. It explores how perception, which is always fragile, transforms how they encounter each other. The bubble itself becomes this vessel, but also a mirror.
A vessel and a mirror. What's the key message from Bubbles then?
I think the core idea is that real connection doesn't mean you have to dissolve your boundaries, merge completely. It's more about the courage to get close without that fear of bursting the bubble, metaphorically speaking.
Right, maintaining individuality while connecting.
Exactly. Understanding starts when you're willing to stay light enough to just drift alongside someone else, share the same air, without becoming, heavy or burdensome. It really frames perception as this mutual thing, this unfolding between selves.
That's a beautiful starting point.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's step into the first room then. Room 1, waters. You said this represents flow and perception.
That's right. This room is about those moments where you feel really present, fluid, connected. It taps into that ongoing sense of being and, importantly, becoming.
So it's about movement, continuity.
Yes, but it also shows that perception is never passive. It's active, it devours, it distorts, it dissolves boundaries.
Okay, so flow isn't always gentle.
Not necessarily. In waters, flow is presented as the living movement of coherence itself. It's like this pattern running through us, asking to be shaped, asking to be trusted.
But there's a catch.
There is. This very flow The thing that sustains coherence can also overwhelm. It can pull you into illusions you mistake for reality, for clarity. And the crucial point is, if you fail to weave that flow into what comes next, if you can't integrate it,
Then things start to break apart.
fragmentation becomes, well, almost unavoidable.
Right. Okay. I can see how that tension would work. Let's look at the specific artworks in Waters. What's first?
First up is Time, a visual piece from 2012. It doesn't show time as just, minutes ticking by.
Not chronological.
No, it's more like a balancing act of different experiences. There's an hourglass, yes, but it's surrounded by this interplay of instincts versus cognition, things woven into our cultures, our societies.
So how time feels rather than how it's measured.
Exactly. It's felt like a spiral, heartbeats, memory, those competing patterns of decisions we make, much more dynamic.
Okay, so time sets up this idea of dynamic balance. How does that connect to something like love?
Well, that leads directly to the next piece, Balancing Love, from 2013. And again, it challenges simple ideas. Love isn't shown as just possession or harmony.
It's a tension.
Yes, attention, a force that stretches you, sometimes even tears at you. It explores that friction between intimacy, wanting closeness, and distance, needing space.
And this relates back to empathy and dissociation.
Absolutely. It questions how much we let into ourself, that's empathy, and how much we push away or alienate from our experience, that's dissociation. Love here is presented as this constant motion, this negotiation, which is actually key to understanding yourself.
A motion of discovery. I like that. Okay, what's next?
Wish in Perception from 2014. This one really hits home the idea that what we want, what we wish for, fundamentally shapes what we see.
But not always accurately.
Almost never perfectly accurately. There's always some distortion, our subjectivity veiling the true reality, whatever that might be. The artwork actually dissolves the boundary between our internal states, like our brain chemistry, and the illusions those states can create. Yeah, it depicts the self almost unraveling into molecules, showing perception as this powerful projection of how our will, our desire, can literally shape what we perceive.
That's a powerful concept. Perception as projection.
It is. And right at the edge of this room, sort of bridging flow and the potential for fracture, is a synesthetic acted poem from 2025 called Choked Through Desires.
Choke through desires. Sounds intense.
It captures the exact moment the self starts to slide into fragmentation, but often without noticing. It's not like a sudden snap.
How is it presented?
As a kind of seductive sip, something that disguises deep existential hungers as something graceful, almost appealing.
Ah, the danger hidden in pleasure.
Precisely. Its power comes from the bodily experience. It evokes sensation blurring with thought, pleasure twisting into something maybe irreversible. It becomes like a hallucination where the self thinks this tainted reality is an authentic choice.
That's quite unsettling. It makes you wonder how you'd even recognize that seductive sip in your own life before it's too late.
Well, that's the reflection it provokes, isn't it? It shows how desire rarely comes alone and how the very things that seem to feed us can actually hollow us out from the inside. It's a quiet warning, really, about being mindful of how easily our appetites can mask something else.
Lot to think about there. So as we leave Waters, there's an audio piece.
Yes, the moving reflection for this room is the song To Let Myself Go by the Avner, featuring Anne Brun.
Okay.
And it really synthesizes everything we've seen in Waters. The rhythm itself echoes that impulse of the self to just keep moving forward, almost surrendering into the flow, into continuity.
But you can't always step back.
Sometimes you can't. It suggests coherence isn't found by stopping, but has to be composed in motion. Integration is never still. It's the ongoing way of being.
Compose and coherence in motion.
Huh.
Okay. So we've felt the flow in Waters, but also the danger of being overwhelmed, the edge of fragmentation. What happens when that fragmentation actually takes hold?
That takes us squarely into room 2.
Shards.
Shards. The name says a lot. It does. This room captures fragmentation, its connection to identity. It represents those times when the self splinters, maybe under sensory overload or contradiction or trauma. It's a space where coherence shatters, and every reflection, every piece of yourself you see feels almost too sharp, too painful to touch.
But you said earlier, fragmentation isn't presented as just a failure here.
That's the crucial insight, I think. It's shown as a testament to the self's incredibly difficult, maybe impossible task. How do you keep believing your own story when the pieces just don't fit together anymore?
No.
This is where empathy might flicker, become harder to access, and dissociation really hardens. The mind withdraws almost as a survival mechanism to protect itself from what the heart, the emotions just can't hold.
That makes sense. So what artworks explore this territory?
We start with Sins from 2011, and again, it's not about judging right or wrong in a moral sense.
Okay, so what kind of sins?
It's more about the delicate balance of proximity, necessity, and viability when you're trying to resist temptation, whatever that temptation might be for the self.
How does it show that?
It illustrates how these sins aren't external threats. They dance right within our experiences. They act like these metaphorical, sensual cages, but they're masked as choices. It shows that even when we're in motion, in flow, we're not immune to being seduced, to getting caught.
Cages masked as choices. Powerful image. What's next?
Shadowed Self from 2014. This one looks through that double lens of identity we often experience, the self we feel internally versus the image we perform for the world.
The inner versus the outer self.
Exactly. It highlights how the self is constantly fragmented, pulled apart by our genetic makeup, by societal scripts, by the roles we have to play. These things challenge our sense of coherence.
And how does the artwork depict this?
It reveals the dance between the self's autarkis, its sort of inherent self-sufficiency, its essence and its catharsis, its public expression, its purification almost. But instead of a smooth mask, it feels more like looking into a cracked mirror.
A cracked mirror.
Yeah.
It feels fragmented. Now, you mentioned wishful perception is also in this room. We saw wish and perception in Waters. How is it different here in Shards? How does desire contribute to fragmentation?
That's a really key point. In Waters, desire was shaping what we see. Here, in Shards, that same process, when it runs wild or hits a wall of contradiction, actually breaks our view of reality. Our perception becomes this fragmented, wish-driven illusion.
So the wish itself becomes the source of the shattering.
In a way, yes. When distorted or denied, the wish can splinter our sense of a coherent reality.
Okay, that distinction makes sense. Then there's Degeneration from 2015. What does that explore?
This piece portrays the self being, well, influenced, growing, decaying, being coaxed, fed, even sold into patterns that look like choices but really aren't.
Like the Sins piece.
Similar thing, yes. It depicts this slow unraveling, often through seeking pleasures that promise escape but end up limiting our options, calcifying possibilities.
Calcifying options.
Yeah. It mirrors neural decay almost. A kind of not just forgetting facts about the world, but forgetting the self, forgetting its own capacity, its own foundations for creating something new.
That's a heavy thought. The pleasures we seek could actually lead to us forgetting ourselves.
It's a sobering reflection in the piece, definitely. It forces you to consider how escape can paradoxically lead to this deep unraveling, losing the very substrate needed for self-creation.
Wow. Okay. And amidst this potential decay, there's a piece about a chase. Lion and Bird.
Yes. Lion and Bird Chase Between Wings from 2025. It's visually striking because there's no clear up or down.
No orientation.
Right. So depending on how you look, it could be a bird escaping a lioness, or maybe it's being chased by an eagle. The point is, the pursuit, the chase, is constant, regardless of its specific form.
And this reflects the self in fall.
It reflects the self in flux, not about good versus evil, but just dissolving in momentum. Flight and fight become just perspectives within this ongoing rhythm of known experiences versus novel ones.
Constant motion, shifting perspectives.
Exactly. And then we have another acted poem, Shaped Bijou, also 2025.
Shaped bijou.
Like jewels.
Bijou, yeah, it's like a jewel or trinket. This poem takes you into a dreamlike seaside setting. It explores that blurry line between memory and anomaly, things that feel off, don't quite fit.
How the self deals with uncertainty.
Precisely. What it knows versus the new things it instinctively seeks but maybe can't quite grasp. It's a story about feeling estranged, but also recognizing the familiar, spiraling through these natural relics, like seashells perhaps, but also through intellectual puzzles, epistemic riddles. And how does this relate to Shards?
It shows how a sharding event, a fragmentation, can turn life's little discoveries, these bijou, into something haunting. The poem culminates in the shattering of the bijou, symbolizing how fragmentation can taint even beautiful findings.
Turning discovery into haunting. That's poignant. And the final piece in Shards
is Scarring from 2022. And again, the focus isn't just on the pain itself.
What is it about then?
It's about the pattern left behind when we fail to integrate difficult experiences. The artwork suggests scars form where the mind and body keep returning metaphorically to touch the original wound.
How is that visualized?
You see imagery like tightly gripped hands, memory shattered like glass. Even the molecules that regulate meaning seem cut or disrupted, preventing the experience from settling into a coherent truth.
So the rupture creates a puzzle.
A puzzle that both locks you in and tears you apart. Empathy tries to bridge the gaps, tries to reconnect, while dissociation acts to protect. The self ends up circling between the echo of the trauma and the possibility of connection.
That image of the mind and body returning to the wound, it really makes you think about how we process pain. We often just want to fix it, make it go away, rather than integrate what it taught us, even if it's hard. Does scarring offer any sense of hope, any way to find meaning in those fragments?
I think it reveals a difficult truth. What hurts most wasn't just the initial pain, but the fragments it created. The hope, perhaps, lies in acknowledging that those fragments are part of the self's ongoing story. Recognizing that empathy and dissociation are always working, trying to guide us back towards some form of coherence, even if it's a changed one.
A coherence that includes the scars.
Exactly. Not erasing them, but integrating them.
Okay. And the audio reflection for shards.
It's A Better Way, a song from the soundtrack of the movie Swiss Army Man.
Oh, interesting choice.
It really fits this fragile terrain. It's like this restless hymn to the search itself, that yearning for a way out or a way through, a better way to somehow reassemble what feels broken.
So the song suggests coherence isn't about erasing the cracks.
No, it's about giving them new meaning. It implies that whatever shatters can still be gathered up, reshaped, carried forward. Even when it's hard to hear how to move on, when our own internal rhythms feel blurred or damaged.
Finding new meaning in the cracks. That's a powerful idea to transition with. So we've moved from the flow of waters through the fragmentation of shards. Where does that leave us?
It leaves us in room 3, silence.
Silence, okay. Is this about emptiness? An end point?
Not at all. This room explores unity and motivation. It's the state where the flow and the fragmentation, all that motion and fracturing, can finally come to rest, allowing desire to manifest, to become clear.
So silence isn't the end of the self.
No, it's the space where all that movement pauses just long enough for us to actually notice the shape we've been making all along.
Ah, a space for reflection, for integration.
Precisely. In this quiet, you see that coherence isn't something we just inherit or something we force onto ourselves. It's something we compose, actively, again and again, often from fragments we didn't even choose.
That's a gentler perspective.
It is. It reveals this gentle truth. No form we take is ever final. No story is ever fully complete. There's always potential for renewal within that stillness.
Okay. What's the first piece we encounter in silence?
It's another acted poem, Fireworks, from 2025. This one captures the self when its grasp on coherence starts to unravel because of too much feeling, too much intensity.
So silence here isn't peaceful.
Not necessarily. It portrays silence not as a lack of words, but as a saturation of them. Voices get swallowed by repetition, by fatigue, by memories that haven't been processed.
Like static.
Exactly like static. The poem depicts the self straining to communicate, to hold on to mutual understanding, but collapsing under the weight of it all. Longing and regret get tangled so tightly that connection itself becomes this pressure that actually fractures the coherence it's trying to achieve.
The quiet violence of overwhelm.
That's a good way to put it. But importantly, the poem also offers a way through. It suggests that even when desire doesn't automatically grant coherence, we can still learn to build meaning from those fragments. We can learn to name the unspoken and maybe even trust silence not as an end, but as a chance for renewal.
Trusting silence as renewal.
Okay.
What follows? Fireworks.
Next is a fascinating visual piece called Mind Over Matter from 2025. And it comes in 2 versions.
2 versions.
Yeah.
Okay, let's start with the first one. One mind over matter.
Right. This one is described as a visual fugue on agency.
A fugue. Like in music. Complex, interwoven themes.
Exactly. Visually, it suggests that complexity. The self appears almost melting, synaptic, like this architecture of constantly shifting configurations. It has to continuously decide which patterns, which rhythms to keep going, and which ones to let go of.
So it's about active choosing, integrating experiences.
Yes. It shows the self integrating impressions into its own internal ecology. Coherence isn't static. It's this dynamic negotiation between all the echoes of past experience. And will our agency acts as the orchestrator, shaping what repeats and what changes.
What's the main takeaway, then, about how we shape ourselves?
I think it invites you to see that the forms we inhabit, our patterns, aren't fixed. They can be softened, reconfigured. Integration becomes this art form, the art of giving fragmentation shape. It emphasizes our agency as this ongoing act of composition.
The art of giving fragmentation shape. I like that. So what about the other version, zero mind over matter?
It uses the identical architecture, the same basic structure. But the self has this quieter, more hesitant stance.
Hesitant. How so?
It explores what happens when our familiar patterns haven't really been questioned yet. When coherence feels kind of bound to inertia, just keeping things the same because that's how they've been.
But empathy and dissociation are still working.
Oh, yes. They're still guiding experience, even if it's happening beneath conscious awareness. They sustain a kind of fragile unity, but without actively seeking renewal or change.
What's the message there?
It reminds us that authenticity isn't some fixed state you achieve. It's this flexible, ongoing process. The self is always negotiating what stays the same and what might change. It emphasizes that even what feels static is actually still alive, still ongoing, just waiting perhaps to be felt differently depending on the choices we make. Even in stillness, the potential for change is there.
Potential within inertia. Okay, moving on, there's a piece with a very intriguing title. Why does blue taste the loudest?
Also, 2025.
Yes. This one maps that fascinating moment when experience fuses sensation with meaning. Synesthesia, almost.
Glue tasting loud.
Right. It illustrates how perception is this active process devouring, translating, shifting, even inverting sensory input. It portrays the tongue, interestingly, as the interface where this process of being happens.
The tongue is the interface. So what's the core message about senses and reality here?
It shows how deeply our physical senses, like taste, are intertwined with how we make meaning. Literally, how our own flow and fragmentation give the world its flavor, its character. The self shapes its perception, its narrative, integrating the patterns of experience into its own unique reality.
Giving the world its flavor, I love that. And there's a counterpart.
Yes. Why does red taste so silent? Also 2025. Same structure, but the inversion of color and sense red now being silent drives home the point.
It's just that reality isn't just about what's out there in a fixed way. It's profoundly defined by how we perceive it, how we shape it.
So it's an analogy.
A powerful analogy for giving old patterns new meaning. You can access different shapes of coherence just by changing your relationship to your own narratives, learning when to resonate with something, when to step back, letting empathy and dissociation guide you in reshaping inherited forms into something that feels alive again.
Changing our relation to narratives, that feels very relevant.
Yeah.
What's the final artwork in silence?
It's the last acted poem, Still Your Eyes, from 2021. This feels like a quiet conversation, a soliloquy almost, from the soul speaking to the fragmented self.
The soul speaking to the self.
Yes, addressing that part of us, often drowned out by noise, by shame, by regrets. It suggests that even if our will, our agency feels lost, we can return to this radical inner stillness, not as passivity, but as a momentum to reorient ourselves.
So stillness is a starting point for change.
Exactly. Healing, the poem suggests, doesn't start by trying to control the pain, but by allowing those feelings, those fragments, to just rest within the self.
Allowing them to rest.
Yeah. It's a call for kindness towards oneself in what can feel like a brutal world. It speaks to the strength found in vulnerability and the possibility that joy and pain can coexist, can share the same face. It's an invitation for the soul to embrace the mind, leading to self-acceptance and maybe an authentic leap forward.
That's a beautiful, almost meditative note to approach the end on. So bringing it all together for us, for the listener.
Yeah.
How do we synthesize this final room? There are two audio reflections.
Yes, 2 songs for silence. First, Baker Street by Jerry Rafferty.
Classic. Why that one?
It mirrors that feeling of longing, maybe for old rhythms to finally come to rest, but also the ache of feeling like you're moving without clear purpose, that kind of searching quality.
Okay. And the second?
The second is Montage, again from the Swiss Army Man soundtrack. This one symbolizes the lived, messy, ongoing nature of integration. How even the strangest journeys, the most fragmented experiences, can become a kind of belonging if we dare to let them be unfinished, unresolved.
So not needing a neat ending.
Exactly. Together, these 2 songs invite us to just feel our own patterns, our own rhythms, maybe a bit more kindly, to trust that meaning isn't something we solve like a puzzle, but something we shape.
One moment, one choice, one breath at a time.
One breath at a time, between our rhythms and our patterns constantly composing.
Wow. What a journey. We've traveled through Roberto D'Angelo's Mirrors of the Self, starting with Waters, that sense of flow and perception.
Then moving into Shards, facing fragmentation and its impact on identity.
And finally arriving in Silence, finding a space for unity, motivation, and composing coherence.
Each piece, each artwork, each poem really did act as a kind of mirror, didn't it? Reflecting how the self flickers between these different states, these existential modes.
And showing how authenticity isn't about being fixed, but about acceptance and that continuous process of composition.
Absolutely. This project powerfully reinforces that core message we keep coming back to. The self isn't a static thing. It's a dynamic process, always being pieced together.
And like we always aim for in these deep dives, understanding that process, applying that knowledge to our own becoming, that's where the real value lies.
D'Angelo's work here, being so interdisciplinary, really shows the power of art. It manages to let science and philosophy speak a common language, offering this incredibly unique perspective on just being human.
It really does feel like a remarkable exploration.
So as we wrap up this deep dive, maybe the final thought to leave you with, drawn right from the exhibit's heart, is this.
What is it?
What patterns in your own life, in your own self, are you ready to reshape? Or maybe just allow to be reshaped as you continue to move through your own ongoing experience?